Right now, a frightened young man bursts into a small town pawn shop, clutching a torn backpack, and the owner does something no one expects. He turns the deadbolt from the inside and says we are going to breathe. This is not a story about crime. Alone, it is a story about a town that chooses calm over chaos, about a metal that finds its way home, and about a boy who decides to stop running. If you believe a locked door can sometimes be a hand held out. You are in the right place. Stay with me, because in the next moments we will watch courage look ordinary and kindness look fierce. Before we begin, tell me where in the world you are watching. Drop your city and country in the comments. I read them all, and I love seeing this little street. Reach your home, type watching from, and your location. And if you want to feel part of this community, add one word that keeps you going today. Maybe brave or hope or steady. If true stories about second chances matter to you, tap like so more people find this. And if you are new here, follow and turn on the bell so you never miss when we post. Take a breath with me. Hear the bell over the door. See the glass cases shine. The owner's hand on the key, the town holding its nerve. We begin now. The bell above the door screamed once, and the pawn shop swallowed the sound like a church taking in a prayer. Then the young man stumbled inside, with a backpack pressed tight to his chest, breath torn and wild, eyes flicking to every corner as if the walls themselves had teeth. Outside a siren yelped, and then went silent, a waiting wolf. The air vent hummed, dust swirled in the window light, and the glass cases of watches and coins gleamed like steady stars. Behind the counter stood the owner, Elias Marino, a man whose hands had known engines and rope and the soft weight of his wife's fingers once upon a time. A man whose back carried the memory of a night shift at a steel yard, and the steadiness of a father who had buried a son and never let the world see him break. He did not shout. He did not reach for the bat under the counter. He looked at the boys, knuckles white and trembling, at the way the zipper teeth on the backpack were misaligned, at the sheen of sweat standing on a forehead that had not yet learned patience. Elias breathed in, slow and even. Then he stepped from behind the counter and walked to the door. The boy flinched, a trapped animal, and Elias raised one palm, a quiet sign, steady as a lighthouse saying, "Come home." Then he turned the brass knob of the deadbolt and clicked it over, locking the door from the inside while the town watched through the glass. A couple at the bus stop, a delivery driver pausing mid-route, two teenagers holding sodas. The boy recoiled and his voice rattled out, "What are you doing? Are you crazy? They are right outside." And Elias answered with the gentleness of a man who spends his mornings feeding the sparrows, "We are going to breathe. We are going to make sure no one gets hurt. And then we are going to decide what kind of men we are." The room changed, the way a storm cell cools the air without yet breaking. The fluorescent hum grew louder, or maybe their ears found it, because the heart slows when someone older speaks calm into your fear. The boy was 20, if that, freckles at the edges of his nose beneath the grime. The kind of face that once sat in a high school metal chair and doodled lightning bolts instead of listening to civics. He kept the backpack tight and his gaze hot. He said, "I just need a minute, just a minute to think. They'll kill me if I go back out." He did not say who they were. He did not have to. Towns like this had names for dangers that wore no uniforms. Elias angled his body so that the boy could see both the locked door and the counter where a small red button hid under the lip, a silent alarm he had never used in 20 years. He did not reach for it, not yet, because the boy's terror was not the terror of a hunter. It was the panic of someone who had stepped on a road that turned to ice underfoot. Elias nodded toward the far wall where guitars hung like a choir, where a corkboard carried the thank you notes of people who had pawned a tool and bought it back, a mother who had traded a ring for rent and reclaimed it the month after, a cook who had saved his knife set, stories pinned with thumbtacks, proof That a pawn shop is not a graveyard for hope, but a waiting room. The boy's eyes flicked. He swallowed. He said, I did not mean to take it. They told me to grab anything with cash value and run. They are in a car. They are watching. If I go back out empty, they will make me pay. Elias heard the words under the words. The grievance of a kid recruited by a friend who had called him brother. The weight of a dare. The sting of needing money. By Friday, behind them the world pressed its nose to the glass. The couple at the bus stop whispering. The delivery driver recording a short video he would later delete, because even he felt it. This was not the kind you exploit. This was the kind you pray. Ends right in the back office. A cheap clock ticked. Each second a metronome for courage. Elias considered the rules. There were laws, and there were the older laws that live in a man's chest. He had learned them from his father, who ran a bait shop, from a neighbor named Irene, who had once fed him her last loaf when his mother was sick, from a boxing coach, who made him hold a plank until his arm shook, and then told him to look up. There is always a way forward if you can meet your own eyes in the mirror. Elias pointed to a stool by the counter. Sit, breathe. Tell me your name. The boy hesitated. Then he dragged the backpack with the carefulness of someone moving a sleeping child. He sat. His shoulders rose and fell. He said, my name is Jace, and the backpack, it is not mine. I do not even know what's in it. He glanced at the window and flinched. Someone outside raised a phone. A few faces had grown into a crowd. Curiosity is a wildfire in a small town. At 4 p.m, Elias stepped closer, not too close, and opened his palms like a referee. We are going to make 3 promises, Jace. We are going to keep you alive. We are going to keep everyone else safe, and we are going to face what you did without lying about it. Jace's mouth opened to argue, and then closed, because the words were a rope thrown to a man in a river. Elias nodded once. He said, I am going to move to the counter and put water on the glass. I am going to call someone I trust, not the number you are afraid of. Someone who knows the difference between a criminal and a kid drowning. And you are going to keep your hands where I can see them, and you are going to breathe. Jace nodded, a quick bird-like motion, and his fingers eased a fraction. The backpack still tight against his ribs, Elias walked back behind the counter, every step measured, every breath steady. He poured water into a paper cup and set it where Jace could reach it without startling. The silent alarm waited under his fingertips like a temptation. He lifted his hand away. Not yet. He reached instead for the old rotary phone he kept for times when the power flickered. He dialed a number etched into bone. Delia Tran. A former Into ran the thrift store next door and volunteered with the community crisis team. Delia picked up on the second ring, her voice low and practical. Elias said, I have a situation, and I need your softest skills. Bring your calm. Do not bring a siren, and please bring Pastor Reuben if he is between hospital visits. Delia did not ask for a speech. She said, I am on my way. Stay with him. Elias hung up and turned the shop sign to closed. The crowd pushed against the glass for a better look. He drew the blinds halfway, and the light softened. Like the room itself was taking a breath with them. Jace shifted on the stool. The harder part, Cunning, the part where the first lie wants to be told because it seems easier than the truth. Elias saw it. He remembered it. The door clicked in his memory, too. Years ago, when he had locked himself inside with his own panic and had to find the key called honesty, he looked at the boy, and he said, you did not run in here to rob me. You ran in here to stop running. You picked this place because glass and light feel safer than whatever waits in that car. Jace blinked fast, and his eyes shone with the first sting of relief. Yes, he whispered. I could not keep going. I could not? Then louder. I did not want to be this. Not today. Not in front of your guitars. Not with all these people watching like I am a show. Elias shook his head just once. You are not a show. You are a son who needs a pause button. We have just pressed it. Now we find the frame. We start again from outside. A cruiser rolled to the curb. No lights, no siren. It was Officer Maya Ortiz, the kind who kept spare juice boxes in her trunk. For scared kids and spare dog treats for anxious mutts. Delia was with her, and Pastor Reuben trailed in his battered cardigan. They moved like people who knew that speed can be violence when fear is already loud. Elias raised a hand to them through the window. Not yet. Give me one more minute. He turned back to Jace and spoke the sentence that would become the hinge on which the whole afternoon would turn. Whatever is in that bag, it does not own you. It does not tell your story. We will open it together when the right eyes are in the room, and we will deal with what comes. We will not let whoever sent you decide who you become. Jace stared at the backpack as if it might answer back, his chest rising and falling, the crowd outside a blur, the hum of the vent a lullaby he did not expect to need. He lifted his hands slowly, a surrender to someone safe, and in that small movement, the pawn shop changed again. It was no longer a place with shelves and cash drawers and price tags. It was a shelter, a circle drawn in chalk where harm had to. Asked permission to enter, Elias felt the weight of years on his shoulders soften. He had locked the door to keep the wolves out and to keep the boy from running back into their teeth. Now he had to keep his promise. 3 promises, alive, safe. Honest, he nodded to Jace. Good, we begin here. Elias kept his gaze soft and steady, the way a man stands between a runaway horse and a fence line. He lifted the receiver again and told Delia to circle to the alley door. No sirens, no radio chatter. Bring Maya and Reuben the quiet way. Crowd outside pressed closer to the glass, and the shop felt like a jar with a lid, air thin, unless someone remembered to breathe for everyone. Jace swallowed and kept his hands where Elias could see them. A white knuckle promised to stay in the circle they had drawn your phone. Elias said, voice low, if it is on, they can pull you back with a single buzz. Put it face down on the counter and slide it away from you. Jace nodded and produced a scratched phone from his hoodie pocket. The case held 2 sticker stars and a crack like a river. He set it down and pushed it toward Elias inch by inch, as if handing over a confession. Good, Elias said. Now take a sip of water. Slow. Let your shoulders know you are not in a sprint anymore. Jace lifted the paper cup. The cup trembled. He drank, some spilled, and he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand like a kid who had forgotten his own age for a second at the alley. Delia's knuckles tapped 3 times, a code they had used in storms when the front door jammed. Elias moved to the back, unlocked, and ushered them in with a fingertip to his lips. Delia Tran wore a denim jacket with a tear at the cuff and eyes that had watched First Nights in America for families stepping into apartments with air mattresses and hope. She had been an AIM-T for 8 years before the budget cut her unit. No. She ran a thrift store where troubled kids sorted donations and learned what it felt like to be needed. Behind her came Officer Maya Ortiz, with her hair braided tight and her badge tucked low, the kind of cop who had argued for de-escalation. Training and got laughed at until the day she talked a man off a water tower without a single shout. Pastor Reuben followed, cardigan pilled at the elbows, hands smelling faintly of hospital sanitizer. A small-town chaplain who believed in showing up, even when he did not know what to say, because presence is sometimes the only sentence that matters. Elias closed the alley door and slid the bolt. The shop was once again a closed fist that chose mercy over force. Delia took in Jace in one long glance, noted the tremor, the darting eyes, the backpack clutched like a raft. Hello, Jace, she said gently. My name is Delia. I sit with people when the worst afternoon of their lives tries to tell them who they are. We are not going to let that happen. This is Maya. She is here to keep everyone safe, and this is Pastor Reuben. He is here to help you carry the weight. Maya lifted her open hands, nothing in them. A stance that said, I am not here to arrest a heartbeat. I am here to listen, Reuben. Nodded, voice like a porch swing. Slow and dependable. Son, you are not alone outside. A primer gray sedan idled across the street. A passenger wore a red cap, pulled low, and stared at the shop without moving. A driver drummed fingers on the steering wheel, a rhythm too fast. Another car rolled by, and the driver leaned out and asked the crowd what was going on. Nobody answered, because even a curious town knows when to hush. Maya glanced through a gap in the blinds and measured distance and time. If they rush the front door, the deadbolt will hold. If they circle to the alley, they will find it barred. If they call, the phone is on the counter for once. Preparation had arrived before panicked Delia stepped to Jace's side, but stayed out of his reach. "May I sit?" she asked. He nodded. She slid onto the neighboring stool, elbows on knees, posture mirroring his. Nervous systems learn from mirrors. She spoke like they were the only two people in the room. "You walked in here instead of getting in that car. It tells me something I do not need a badge to see." Jace blinked hard again. His voice came out hoarse. "I messed up. I keep messing up, my little sister. She thinks I am good. She draws me on paper with a cape like I am a superhero, and I am not. I am just tired and broke. And I owed a guy for a radiator. He fixed, and he said run and grab something, and it will be square." Dahlia nodded. "Debt can feel like a leash, but look at me. You cut it the moment you chose this room. We are going to help you hold that cut open until it heals." Elias returned to the counter and laid a clean pawn ticket on the glass. "It's back blank." He set a pen beside it. Sometimes choices are easier to see when they fit on one small rectangle. He said, "We are going to draw 3 doors." He sketched 3 rectangles. "We can open the door where you run, and they chase, and it ends the way everyone fears. We can open the door where we lie and pretend it did not happen. That door always swings back and hits you later. Or we can open the door where we tell the truth, inside this room with these people, and we figure out what to do with the bag and with you." Jace stared, then lifted the pen with shaky fingers and drew a line through the first door. His mouth moved, a wordless no. He hesitated at the second, then set the pen down and tapped the third door twice. A small percussion of surrender. Maya spoke then. Voice even, Jace. "I am not here to treat you like a target. I am here to make sure no one gets hurt. If we open that bag, we do it together, and we do it slow. My body camera is off because this is a conversation, not a scene. When we choose, I will turn it on, and we will state the truth. No surprises." Jace inhaled, a breath that pulled the rib cage wide. He slid the backpack to the counter and rested his fingertips on the zipper. Elias stood on one side, Maya on the other, Delia and Reuben a half step back, the shop collective heartbeats settling into the same cadence. Slow, deliberate, human. The zipper rasped like a match head. Jace opened the mouth of the bag and peeled it back. Inside lay a velvet jewelry tray with spaces for rings, 2 watches wrapped in microfiber, a small wooden box with a brass latch, and a handful of loose envelopes, money orders, receipts. The small wooden box had a sticky note, "Deliver tonight." A smear of grease marked the edge. Dahlia's breath caught almost imperceptibly, not because of the watches, but because beneath them lay a purple heart in a cracked presentation case. The purple ribbon frayed, the metal face scratched. Maya's jaw tightened. Elias closed his eyes once, then opened them, steady. In the broken glass of memory, he saw a customer 2 months back. Mrs. Alma Duarte, white hair pinned in a bun, tears on her cheeks because the box with her late husband's metal had been taken during a break-in. Elias had promised to keep an eye out and had written the serial number behind the counter. Memory not letting go until it could make good. Jace looked from the metal to their faces. Shame spread up his neck. "I did not know," he whispered. "I swear I did not know what was in there. The guy said grab anything that looked like it would pawn fast. I thought it was just watches and rings. I did not know this belonged to a man who earned it. Pastor Reuben laid a hand on the counter and spoke like a blessing. Now you do know, and knowing asks you to become someone new. You do not have to carry this alone, but you do have to carry it honestly. Maya turned her camera on. A click that felt respectful rather than threatening. She spoke the date and time, the names of those present, the items visible, the choice the young man had made by coming inside and opening the bag in their presence. A record not of a crime alone, but of a decision to face it outside. The red cap. Passenger made a call. The gray sedan rolled forward and parked half a car length closer. The delivery driver across the street backed his van subtly to block part of the view. Even the town seemed to want to shield the moment. Delia met Jace's eyes. "Whose name is on the sticky note?" she asked gently. Jace swallowed, his voice a thread. "Guy they call Renz, he owes another guy. This was supposed to make a payment. If I mess this up, they will come to my building. My sister will hear it. I cannot let that happen." Elias nodded. "That is why we do this together. Not loudly, not recklessly. We return what belongs to a widow. We record what belongs on a report. And we keep you and your sister from a knock at midnight." Maya angled her radio mic away and spoke low into it, requesting a plain car to roll by twice and keep distance, requesting that Officer Barnett swing through the next block and speak to the corner store owner, who knows every car that sits too long. Small town choreography, deliberate and quiet. Pastor Reuben took out his phone and thumbed a number. Alma. Duarte answered on the second ring. He spoke softly. "Alma, this is Reuben. I think we have your husband's medal. We are handling it with care. Would you like to come by later when it is safe?" There was silence on the line, then a breath that sounded like a weight lifted a fraction. "Yes," she said. "Yes, please. I will wait for your call. Thank you." "Thank you." Jace's shoulders shook once and then held. The tremor inside a man who has just realized that mercy can be heavier than punishment because it requires you to stand up. Straight, Elias slid a tissue box across the counter, not making a show of it. Jace took one and pressed it hard to his eyes. He whispered, "I am sorry," not to the room in general, but to someone not there, to a future version of himself who might look back and need to hear it. Elias nodded. "Apology is a tool, not a finish line. You are using it right now. Keep going." The sight of the Purple Heart settled over the room like a quiet snowfall, cool and heavy. Even the humming lights seemed to lean in. Jace kept his hands where everyone could see them, knuckles no longer white, only pink and human. He looked at the medal as if it were a gaze looking back, and in that reflection he did not see a thief. He saw a boy who had run out of shortcuts and into a door that refused to let him keep lying to himself. Delia angled her stool so her shoulder lined with his. "Gentle geometry that told the nervous system it was not cornered, Jace," she said. "Tell. Use where your sister is right now, not to scare you, to keep her safe." Jace drew in a breath that trembled and steadied. "Lena is at the after-school program at the rec center until 5. Then she walks home with the neighbor's kid. Our place is 2 blocks from here. 3rd floor. No elevator. Door sticks unless you lift while you turn the handle." He swallowed. "If Renz sends someone to the building, and I am not there, they will. Bang, she will hear it. I cannot let that be Lena's memory of me." Maya nodded once, precise and calm. "Then we move first, Delia. Can you call Miss Farrell at the rec center? Ask her to keep Lena busy with an art project, and say Jace is helping me sort books. No drama, no panic, if anyone asks. Lena is with you until we say otherwise." Delia was already dialing. The thrift store had taught her that the fastest way to quiet fear is to give it a job. She listened, smiled into the receiver, said a handful of simple truths, and when she hung up her voice carried relief. "Lena will be painting kindness rocks in the courtyard. She thinks her brother got roped." into heavy lifting at my shop. She sounded proud to say his name. Elias drew a slow breath and looked at the wooden box. The sticky note whispering "deliver tonight." He unlatched it with the carefulness of a man opening a door between weather. Inside lay an old brass key taped to a folded photo. The photo showed a young soldier with a wide grin, uniform pressed. An older man beside him with a hand on his shoulder. The background a little wood frame house with a porch swing. On the back, in tidy handwriting, Alma and Joe, first day home from overseas. Reuben touched the corner with reverence. "That grin could hold up a roof," he murmured. "We are going to get this back where it belongs." Maya's eyes moved to the key. "What does the key fit?" Elias frowned in thought, then snapped his fingers softly. "The storage locker in Northside Mini." A customer named Renz bragged once that he kept his stash there because nobody checks units if the rent is paid, he said. It had a yard sale, like it was a joke. I remembered, because the name Renz is the kind of name a bird lover like me keeps. If this key is labeled for a unit, we might be looking at more than a single bag of stolen goods. Chase's face went pale. He shook his head. "I am dead if we go." Near his locker, he said, "Renz thinks fear is a business card. He hands it to people, and they keep it in their wallet." Delia's voice softened. "You are not dead. You are here. And fear is not a card. It is a shadow. You turn the light, and it moves." Maya lifted her radio mic to her shoulder and spoke in that low, measured tone again, requesting that Detective Sosa be notified off-channel. "Need a quiet eye on Northside Mini. No lights, no stride that rattles the neighborhood. We are just looking at doors and names. Nothing more. Not yet." She clipped the mic back and looked to Elias. "We do this without turning this block into a circus. We owe that to the boy and to Alma from the front windows." The gray sedan idled one car length closer. The passenger with the red cap now leaned forward, elbows on knees. The driver tapped the wheel faster. The speed of a man whose patience starts to crack. Elias nodded toward the blinds. "Talia," he called softly to the back room. And a young woman stepped out, wiping her hands on a rag. The apprentice who cleaned guitars and tuned them on slow afternoons. Talia had a coil of dark hair and a gaze that did not bounce, only landed. She took in the room, the bag, the people. "Attention, tell Mr. Chavez across the street to put his sign to closed and sweep the sidewalk long. Tell him I will pay for 2 loaves of bread when this is done. He will know what I mean, and ask Mrs. Patel at the corner store to hold back anyone who wants to press their face to my glass. Tell her I will fix her radio this week." Talia nodded and slid through the alley. In a town like this, favors were a kind of currency that bought silence, and Space Chase's phone lit up face down and the screen buzzed once. Then again, a name in block letters glowed through a hairline crack. "Renz." Elias kept his voice steady. "We are not answering. Not yet." Let him hear his own impatience. A third buzz. Then a text blinked across the lock screen. "Clock's ticking, kid. Deliver or drown." Chase flinched. Reuben set a palm flat on the glass near the phone. A simple anchor. A reminder that hands can. Choose not to shake. Maya angled her body between Jace and the door. She was not tall, but presence does not measure in inches. The red-capped passenger finally stepped from the sedan and pretended to tie his shoelace. His eyes never left the shop. Another man, square shoulders, scanned the alley mouth. The air changed the way it does right before a dog decides whether to bark or bite. Elias took the pawn ticket he had sketched on and flipped it. On the blank side, he drew a rectangle for the shop and a thin corridor for the alley. He placed tiny circles where each of them stood, and then he drew an arrow that led to the back office, where a second door opened into the shared hallway of this ancient brick building. The hallway led to the dentist's office 2 doors down, and from there to a stairwell that emptied onto the block behind. He whispered it like a bedtime story for the anxious. "We have 2 exits, one visible, one kind. We are not running. We are choosing a path that lets us finish what is right without feeding what is wrong. Dahlia nodded. I will take Chase to the back if we must. We are not making him a rabbit in a dog race. We are making him a witness who does not need to bleed to be believed. Looked from the map to the metal. His jaw set. He asked a question. Without lifting his voice. What happens to me when this is over? Do I go in cuffs in front of Lena and the whole block? Or do I get a chance to show up on time to talk to someone who will hear me? Maya did not look away. Consequences are not a door slam. They can be a hinge. You came in here and chose a hinge. The charge will be what it is, but I will write every line of what you did to make sure nobody gets hurt and to get this medal home. The judge will read that. People forget. Paperwork can hold truth if someone bothers to write it. Jace swallowed and nodded. Not a boy's nod now, a man's. Shaky but standing, the alley doorknob rattled. A test, not a full try. A message that someone's hand had found the medal. Talia slipped back through just then and whispered, Mr. Chavez is sweeping, like his life depends on crumbs disappearing. Mrs. Patel has a line at the lottery counter that stretches to the chips aisle, and nobody feels like moving. The block is doing what you asked. Elias smiled with one corner of his mouth. Gratitude quick and real. Tell them both I will come by. With coffee when the sun stopped staring, Talia grinned and melted to the back again. She was 20 and had learned more about community in a pawn shop than a textbook ever held. Maya moved to the window slit and watched the red cap passenger finish, tying the shoe he never untied. He stood, stretched, cracked his neck, spoke into his phone without taking his eyes off the shop. A black SUV rolled past slow. Windows tinted. It kept going. But the message was clear. Fishbowl pressure. Make the boy panic. Make someone inside. Make a mistake. Elias tapped the map with his pen. Time to act, not react, he said softly. Reuben, will you call Alma and ask her to meet Delia at the back door of the church in 20 minutes? We will get her medal to her without crowd or camera. Maya, ask Sosa to be at Northside Mini in 30, with 1 plain car and 3 calm breaths. Delia, get your tote, the one with the thrift store logo. We will put the medal and the photo in. There, no boxes and hands to draw eyes. Normal is our armor. Jace's phone buzzed again. The text colder now. Last chance, kid. We are watching your glass. The word watching landed like a pebble in a still bowl, sending circles to the rim. Elias covered the phone with a polishing cloth. Out of sight, out of the loop that drags. You wanted to stop running. He murmured, this is how you walk. 1 step, then another, with people at your side. Chase nodded again. And it looked easier this time, like the nod belonged to his spine, not only his head. From the alley door came a knock that was not tentative this time. Knuckles flat and hard. 3 beats, then silence. Maya's hand hovered, not on a weapon, on the door frame, feeling the vibration that lingered in wood. She looked. To Elias, a question without words. He nodded to her and to the plan sketched on the pawn ticket. It was time to choose the kind door. Maya held her palm an inch from the alley door, feeling the shake left in the wood by those hard knuckles. Then she stepped back with the patience of water-carving stone. Her voice stayed low, and even. We hold the plan. We do not let urgency choose for us. Elias nodded. The kind door, he whispered. And the room shifted from waiting to moving. Delia slipped the metal case and the folded photo into her thrift tote. The canvas soft and ordinary, the sort of bag that carries sweaters and second-hand stories. Pastor Reuben took the pawn ticket. Map slid it into his pocket and murmured a short prayer that sounded more like a promise than a plea. Jace stood, knees wobbly, then firm. He looked at the front glass where the crowd had thinned to a hush, and at the alley where danger breathed through cracks. His jaw set. I am ready to walk, he said. Elias met his eyes. You are not running, son. You are walking with us. Talia ghosted. In from the back, hair gathered under a knit cap. She carried 2 guitar cases that were light as air and looked heavy to anyone watching. Decoys born from a musician's life. She winked once at Jace, then at Elias. Message received. I will make noise where noise helps and silence where silence saves. Elias turned the front sign from close to by appointment only, a tiny difference. That told locals to mind their own business without feeling shut out. He dimmed the fluorescence 1 notch. The air felt softer. Like breath after a long cry, the alley knock came again, louder, followed by a voice that tried to sound bored. Delivery. The voice called, Need a signature for a package. Maya smiled without joy. The kind of smile that does not show teeth. She spoke through the door. Leave it at the front. We are not using the alley entrance today. Her tone made plain that she knew it was a lie wrapped around a test. On the street, the red-capped passenger stood, cracked his neck again, and took 3 slow steps toward the front. A driver angled the gray sedan as if to box a shadow. Pressure-like hands on her throat. Steady and mean Delia moved first. Jace at her side, Reuben behind them like a rear guard. They slipped into the back office and into the shared hallway. Paint flaking, old bulletin board with dentist flyers, the hum of an ancient vending machine that sold warm ginger ale and charity. Talia stepped to the counter and began to tune. A guitar with exaggerated care, metal strings pinging, a sound that says this is still a music shop. Just a slow afternoon. Elias stayed near the register, 1 hand on the cloth that covered Jace's phone, the other ready to draw a breath deep. Enough to keep even the impatient alive in the hallway. Dahlia's whisper became the metronome. Heel toe, no rush. Stair treads can creak if you stomp. Jace breathed with her, matching. The rhythm of someone learning a new pace at the dentist's door. Aper sign read back in 15. But the handle turned under Delia's hand, and Dr. Alvarez himself looked up from a tray of tools, silver hair soft. Eyes bright with the kind of kindness that keeps a practice alive in a town that sometimes pays with pies. He took in the scene in 1 glance. The tote, the young man, the fear, and he nodded like a man opening a hidden gate. The back stair is clear, he murmured. The side door opens to Maple Lane. No eyes there at this hour. Go with care. God go with you on the shop floor. Maya watched the red-capped passenger step closer to the glass. He cupped his hands as if to shade sun, but the day was already soft. He wanted to see, not glare. Maya shifted so her shoulder filled a slice of the window. She held that patient gaze. That makes bullies feel like they are standing on a stage without lines. The driver rolled down his window and pretended to check a map. Everyone pretending. Everyone choosing which pretend gets to be real in the stairwell. A shoe scuffed above. A sound like a sentence ending. Delia froze. Jace froze with her. Reuben lifted a hand, listening. A janitor appeared on the landing, old ball cap, headphones around his neck, a mop bucket rattling. He looked at them, and at Delia's tote, and at Jace's shaking fists. And then he looked at the tiny cross on Reuben's sweater. Recognition like a porch light. He leaned his mop against the wall, pulled a ring of keys from his belt, and unlocked the service door that most people forgot. He held it open with a foot and offered a nod that meant, I see you. I am with you. No speeches required back in the pawn shop. Jace's phone buzzed a small, angry bee under the cloth. Elias did not move to lift it. He let the buzzing be a sound they did not obey. Discipline is a muscle. It grows in small acts. Talia plucked a chord that sounded like a road being chosen. Maya answered a knock at the front with silence. A powerful answer when someone expects flustered words. The red-capped passenger finally spoke through the glass. Open up, man. We need to browse. Cash in hand. He lifted a roll of bills and tapped it to the glass with a smirk. Maya lifted her palms. Public and empty. Her badge was tucked low. Her presence higher than any badge could sit. Not today. She mouthed. Not for you down the service stairs. Air cooled, concrete smell, old rain caught in corners. Delia walked with a mother's steadiness, not rushing, not lagging. Jace kept thinking of Lena painting kindness rocks, of the word brother written in bubble letters across a page, of how he had wanted to wear a cape, and now he wanted to earn his own name back. Reuben whispered the simple things that keep panic from filling the void, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Think of someone who loved you before you made a mess. Jace saw his grandmother's porch, the striped chair, her hands shelling peas into a silver bowl. He kept moving. They reached the Maple Lane door. Dahlia eased it open, and the lane yawned empty, except for a calico cat blinking on a dumpster lid. The church back door was 3 buildings over, paint flaking, a brass handle that looked like someone had polished it with their sleeve every Sunday. Reuben peered out, scanned left and right. Quiet as a winter morning, he nodded, and they slipped into daylight shaped like safety. Delia pulled the door shut with a soft click that sounded like a boundary being honored in the shop front. Maya's radio clicked once. Detective Sosa checking in from nowhere and everywhere. The storage facility is quiet, came the whisper, unit. Numbers line up with a series registered to a W. Renner, likely your Wrens. I will wait for your signal. Maya breathed and kept her eyes on the red cap, who had lost his smirk and gained a twitch. The kind that says the script is not going how it was sold at the church door. Delia knocked a pattern the town knew. 3 short, 1 long. The door opened to a cool hallway, and a woman with white hair and eyes that looked like someone had taken the weight off one shoulder, only to place it on the other. Alma Duarte, small and straight, wearing a cardigan with a missing button near the hem. She saw Delia, then Reuben, then Jace, and her hand went to her throat, not in fear, in recognition that a promise might be about to stand up and be counted. Delia reached into the tote, lifted the cracked case with both hands, as if it were a newborn. Alma's breath caught, and the hall filled with a quiet so true that even the cat in the lane with stilly lies glanced at the clock, counted to 10, and slid his hand from Jace's phone to the counter. He was buying seconds for a transfer he could not see, trusting that the kind door had done its work. The red-cap passenger scowled and stepped back, calling someone with his eyes even if his mouth stayed shut. The driver revved the engine a notch, hunger making noise. Maya did not flinch. She was a stone in a river, and the water would go around her, whether it liked it or notin'. The church hall. Alma ran a thumb over the Purple Heart's edge, the scratches catching on skin that had known 20 different kinds of work. She lifted her gaze to Jace, who stood with hands visible, shame and hope twins in his eyes. I did not know what was in the bag, he said. I chose to stop when I saw where I was. I chose to open it where people could witness me. I am sorry. Alma blinked hard and nodded once, the kind of nod that tells a body it can release one held breath. Then she pressed the case to her heart and whispered, "Thank you, Joe," as if her late husband had walked through another kind of door. Just then, back at the pawn shop, the red-cap passenger tapped his phone, and the gray sedan's trunk popped an inch. A signal. A threat? A bluff? Maybe all 3. Maya shifted her stance. The calm of someone who has already decided to do the right thing even if right must hold a line. Elias reached below the counter, not for the silent alarm, for a small laminated sign that read Community First. He propped it on the glass, a message to anyone who could still read. In the cool hush of the church hallway, Alma held the purple ribbon like a hand she once knew by heart. Dahlia spoke softly with Miss Farrell to extend Lena's painting time. Kindness rocks turning into a small wall of color that would keep a little sister busy and safe. Jace watched all of it with a face that was learning how responsibility feels. Heavy, yes, but shaped to fit a person who stands up straight. Pastor Reuben set the cracked case on a table like an altar. He whispered, "That some weight is worth carrying, because it reminds you who you serve." Alma nodded and laid her palm over the metal. "Thank you for stopping," she told Jace. "Thank you for not making my husband's name smaller than it is." Jace swallowed hard and said he did not want to be smaller either. Not any more back at the pawn shop. Maya took one slow breath and another. The red-capped passenger had crept close. Enough to fog the glass with his breath. He cupped his hands again and tried to smile like a customer. His eyes said hunter. Elias stood where a man stands when his store is a shelter, not a till. Talia kept the guitar in her hands and let a gentle run of notes spill into the room. Sound a signal? This is still human ground, not a stage for fear. Mr. Chavez swept the same patch of sidewalk for the 5th minute in a row, the bristles hissing. A private language that meant keep moving, nothing to see. Mrs. Patel kept her line long and patient, pretending to need exact change for every lottery ticket. The corner itself felt like a chorus of small choices, holding a border detective sosis. Whisper came through Maya's radio again. Steady and low, "I have a judge on the line for a phone warrant. I will need a statement that links the key and the unit to a chain of thefts. Nothing dramatic, only true." Maya looked toward the church, as if truth could travel through brick. She keyed the mic, copy, and then called Delia. "Put me on speaker with Jace and Reuben." The church hallway hummed with the sound of a call that could turn shadows into daylight. Jace cleared his throat and spoke into the phone, words careful and honest. He explained who handed him the backpack, where the sticky note came from, the name Renz, the story of the brag about a storage unit, the brass key taped inside a box marked for delivery tonight. Reuben added the memory of Alma's reported break-in, dates, the description of the missing metal, the case with the serial number Elias had written down months ago. Maya repeated the details to Sosa, with the calm of someone laying bricks, each one level, each one needed. Sosa said thank you. Then 2 words that felt like a door unlocking, warrant pending. Jace glanced at Alma. She reached for his hand with the gentleness of a grandmother handing a cup of tea to a person who has been in the weather. She told him that courage is not fireworks. It is a pilot light. Keep it fed, and the house stays warm. Jace breathed in and asked the question that had been gnawing. What about Renz at my building? What about Lena? I cannot let my mistakes. Knock on her door. Delia smiled a small, fierce smile. Then we move the door, she said. Miss Farrell will walk Lena to the church when the painting is done. 2 volunteers will meet them at the corner. I will stand at the steps with a whole basket of donated scarves and look like a woman running a giveaway. And you, Jace, will be inside with Alma and Reuben, sorting old hymnals. We are going to look like ordinary life, so hard that trouble will. Doubt its own eyes at the shop. The red-capped passenger thumped a knuckle on the glass. An ugly little drum. Open up, old man, he said with a grin that did not touch his eyes. Elias tilted his head and smiled back the way a father smiles at a sulking teenager, patient but immovable. By appointment only. He mouthed it again. The driver revved the engine, then killed it, then revved again. Insecurity wearing a costume, Maya positioned herself so the red cap saw her and her calm. Not a dare, a promise. If he pushed, she would not push back. She would simply hold. And sometimes the thing that breaks a bully is a refusal to enter. The dance Sosa called in. Warrant approved. The unit is listed to a W. Renner with a sublet note that matches a phone number we have tied to 2 grab and run reports. We will open the door at Northside in 20, quiet, no theater. Maya nodded. Eye still on the glass, copy. We need a way to keep the gray sedan busy while we move. Elias tapped the counter with that polishing cloth covering Jace's phone. Then he pulled the cloth back, scrolled to the thread from Renz, and looked at the last text. Clock's ticking. Kid, deliver or drown. Elias's voice was dry as a bone in the shade, if fear is a hook. We make it catch on something of our choosing, he said. Jace, would you be willing to send 1 message from my phone? Same spelling, same cadence? Meet at the river lot in 20. Trash can by the benches. No cops. I will bring the box, Elias. Eyes flicked to Maya. It was a risk, yes, but a shaped one. Maya nodded. We will have Barnett drive by first. One pass, then a second. We will let Renz find a police car to make him skittish. Then a gap big enough that a greedy man cannot help stepping into it. We will keep real action at the storage unit with Sosa. While the river lot becomes a place where patients waste their time, Jace looked at Alma, at the metal, at his hands. He nodded. I can write like myself, he said, the shame and the defiance tangled in a new rope that felt like a lifeline. Dahlia dictated the text with Jace's cadence. Elias typed. The message went blue. A small ship leaving a harbor. The red cap's phone buzzed in his pocket almost instantly. He read, smirked, showed it to the driver. The sedan's engine coughed. Awake, they pulled away too fast, then slowed, then turned the wrong way first, then circled back, suspicion and hunger arguing in a front seat. Maya watched without moving and felt the block exhale just a little. Elias lifted the blinds an inch, catching Mr. Chavez's eye. The baker nodded. He stepped into the street with a tray of day-old rolls and offered them like communion to the handful of onlookers who had not yet drifted away. Thank you for staying out of my doorway, he said with a chuckle. Bread makes patience easier. Mrs. Patel stepped out too, with paper cups of sweet tea. The crowd thinned from edges rather than center, the way ice melts under warm rain at the church. Miss Farrell arrived with Lena, who carried 2 kindness rocks, one painted with a tiny sunrise, one with the word brave in shaky letters. She saw Jace and ran to him, and for a moment the story stopped trying to be a headline and became a living room. Jace knelt and said he was helping neighbors fix a mix-up. Nothing scary, only important. Lena nodded like a small judge granting a motion. Alma pressed the metal case close again, as if gathering strength from its weight. Reuben whispered that some blessings wear boots and carry radios. Dahlia checked her watch, and then her tote. Time to move the second half of the plan, she said. Maya is holding the front. Sosa is waiting at the unit. We walk Jace to the side door, and I take Lena to the fellowship hall. We will fold donated blankets until the world remembers how to breathe on the far edge of town. Northside Minnie sat behind a rusted chain-link fence. Afternoon light flat and forgiving. Detective Sosa leaned against a plain sedan and chewed a mint. 2 deputies in work jackets stood like men on break. A manager in a golf shirt fidgeted with a key ring. The phone warrant printed on fresh paper lay on a clipboard that smelled like toner. Sosa rubbed his jaw and thought about fathers and sons, about the weight of a medal and of the face of the boy on the call. His radio clicked once, a code that meant ready, the kind of ready that does not shout. Maya gave Elias a small nod. It was time for him to step away from the glass and toward his people. He locked the register, not because of money, because tasks completed are a way to tell your nerves that order is possible. Talia slipped the guitar back into its case and lifted one of the prop cases too. She would walk out the alley later like a musician headed to a bus. One more decoy. In a day built from decoys and truths woven together, Elias looked at the floor where Jace had first stood and thought of all the feet that had hesitated there over the years, some from joy, some from need. He whispered a thank you. He did not aim at anyone in particular. The gray sedan rolled past the river lot with the casualness of men trying to look like they had a picnic to attend. The red caps scanned the benches. A trash can sat by the water, with a sticker peeling off the side. Barnett's cruiser drove by once, and then again. Too slow the first time, too fast the second. A clumsy dance on purpose. A driver cursed and parked a half block down with the engine ticking. Impatience is a leash if you let it be clipped. Behind them a family tossed a frisbee, and their dog did not care about criminal schedules. The world insisting on being ordinary, while plans sharpened in the church parking nook. Jace hugged Lena once more, and promised to bring her a soda from Mrs. Patel's When this was done, Delia squeezed his shoulder. Reuben pressed a small folded paper into his hand, a verse about fear not needing to be the loudest voice. Jace tucked it into his pocket like a talisman. He was not a different person yet, but he was walking like one, which is often how change begins. At the storage facility gate, Sosa lifted the clipboard. The manager swallowed and nodded. The bolt slid. The chain link parted with a tired groan, and the quiet rows of roll-up doors looked like teeth in a sleeping mouth. Somewhere a train horn called across the flats, steady and far. Sosa glanced at the key taped under the brass latch and let out a breath he had been holding since the call. He said to nobody and everybody, "Let's bring daylight in careful," and stepped forward. Northside Mini took in the late light like a quiet pond, the rows of corrugated doors holding their breath. Detective Sosa slid the key into the lock of Unit B14 and nodded to the manager, who stood with the warrant on the clipboard. The latch lifted with a tired sigh, and the door rolled up with a sound like a train leaving a small station. Inside, the unit breathed out dust and secret. Stacked plastic bins with masking tape labels, jewelry unsorted, watches, paper, and 3 guitar cases leaned against the back wall like props in a bad story. Sosa clicked a penlight and swept the beam with care. "This is not treasure," he said to his notes. "This is grief arranged in rows." He set on a table a sheet of butcher paper and began to place items on it with gloved hands. A box of rings, envelopes stuffed with receipts, a cigar tin rattling with teeth of old keys. He paused at a small ledger bound in fake leather. Inside, neat columns listed dates and locations and dollar amounts. Initials W and R appeared in the margins with arrows, and beneath one entry, a street name matched Alma's block. The page smelled faintly of motor oil and cheap cologne. Sosa felt the click a detective lives for, the way separate beads slide together on a string and become a necklace you can hold up to the light. He dictated softly to his phone. Chain of items consistent with multiple break-ins. One purple heart case, by description recovered earlier. Ledger indicating payout structure from W Renner to R team. Probable Wrens. Probable runners. Names to be cross-matched outside the unit. A forklift beeped somewhere like a sleepy bird. 1. Deputy in a work jacket snapped photos with a calm face. The manager kept wiping his key ring like a rosary. Sosa turned a page and found a folded map with a circle around the river lot and an X over a trash can icon. He looked up and held the map without moving. The same trash can Barnett had rolled past twice. Greed is tidy when it thinks it is winning. He said to nobody. Then into his mic he sent a low pulse. Keep the river lot stall going. Let suspicion. Fight hunger in that sedan until it bites itself. We have wrens in ink. We do not need him in our doorway, yet at the river. The gray sedan idled with the resignation of a dog tied to a post. The red cap paced and peered, and checked his phone every 30 seconds. A little boy on a scooter wheeled around the benches, and his mother called him back with a voice like a soft net. Barnett parked 2 blocks down and stared at his dashboard as if it contained the novel. His hands relaxed, the kind of relaxation that comes from a decision made. Hold the stall. Do not pull the thread too soon back at the church, Jace. Sat at a folding table with a pen and a bottle of water. Pastor Reuben placed a yellow legal pad in front of him and said, "We write what happened. We write it plain, and we sign our names to it." Delia kept Lena folding blankets in a rhythm that turned worry into neat stacks. Alma sat nearby with the metal case on her lap, watching the boy who had carried a mistake inside a bag and was now putting it down in sentences. Jace wrote slowly, hand steadying line by line. He wrote about the radiator debt, about the text that said run and grab, about the choice to step into light. He did not try to make himself a hero. He wrote himself human, and that is what the law often forgets to ask for. Reuben slid a small bowl of mince over without comment. A kindness shaped like nothing more than sugar and spearmint in the pawn shop. Maya's phone chimed once. Sosa's message short and clear. Ledger ties confirmed. We will close the unit under warrant and wait to see if Renz takes the bait. Do not provoke a street show. Maya nodded to the empty air, her eyes still on the glass where the red cap had been. The sedan gone now toward the river lot, a brief absence that felt like a tide pulling back. Elias exhaled what he had been holding since the first knock. Talia set the tuned guitar down and picked up a broom like a stage partner swapping props. Normal is a costume that protects the heart, she murmured. Elias smiled without showing his teeth. You wear it well. Mr. Chavez crossed the street with a brown paper bag and slid it through the half-open door. 2 loaves warm enough to fog the bag. For later, he said with a nod, for hunger that deserves a good meal. Elias squeezed his shoulder and tucked the bread under the counter, a reminder that the story in this block was not only about theft and fear, it was also about people who ferry each other across at Northside Mini. Sosa stacked the bins in a secondary arrangement, items photographed, catalog numbers scribbled. He set the ledger in an evidence sleeve and handed the key to the manager. With a line written across the warrant copy, unit sealed under court order, do not open without me. The manager nodded and locked the roll-up door with hands that trembled less now that someone older had taken the driver's seat of the moment. Sosa's plain sedan rolled out under the chain link with the gravity of a clock striking an hour. The kind of hour where things tilt the gray sedan at the river lot finally pulled into a space, and the red cap walked to the trash can with 2 steps of swagger and 3 steps of doubt. His hand reached inside and came up with gum wrappers and a flyer for a softball tournament. He cursed and kicked the can. The driver leaned on the horn twice and then stopped, the kind of honk that wants to sound like power and only sounds like frustration. Barnett's cruiser appeared in the rearview like a conscience and idled and then drifted away. The sedan's engine revved and they pulled out, indecision driving. They turned right and left, then right again toward the pawn shop without quite committing. The world around them refused to center on their urgency. A jogger tied his shoe. A kid fed pigeons. Water moved under the bridge, like it always does. Maya watched them from the window slit as they returned to the block slowly. The red cap talking with his hands now, the driver scowling deeper. She glanced at Elias and kept her voice the same temperature, soft and firm. If they come in, we do not engage what they want, which is theater. We engage what we have, which is community and a report to file and a door that locks. Elias nodded and set a small laminated card near the register that read cash drawer, limited after 3. A signal that this store has nothing worth a smash and grab after lunchtime. Talia positioned herself by the hallway with one of the prop guitar cases, ready to exit like a musician catching a bus if Maya gave the nod. Small choreography, big meaning in the church hall. Jace finished his statement and slid the paper toward Reuben. The pastor read it slowly and nodded. This is honest, he said, and honest carries better than loud. Delia peeked out the side window and saw Miss Farrell walk past with 2 volunteers carrying a cardboard box of donated scarves. The cover story working like a blanket over coals. Alma patted the metal case once, as if to remind it that it had come home to hands that would keep it safe. Jace asked if he could call his grandmother. Delia dialed and held out the phone. A thin voice answered and said, "Baby, are you eating?" The most grandmother sentence in the world. Jace closed his eyes. His voice thick, "I am, and I am trying to do the right thing." His grandmother said, "That is all any of us get to do." Sosa parked 2 blocks from the shop and walked the rest with the amble of a man on a Saturday. He carried a paper coffee cup and wore a jacket that could have been anyone's. He noted the gray sedan idling by the curb again. He noted the red cap watching the glass and pretending not to watch. He slipped into the thrift store next to the pawn shop and nodded to a chalk sign that read "Fill a bag $5." Delia's teenage volunteer behind the counter smiled a tired smile. Sosa bought a used paperback and waited in the smell of old fabric and lemon cleaner. Sometimes the right move is to stand near without sharpening the air. Gray sedan's rear door cracked, and a third man slid out. Heavier, older, with a face that looked like it had survived 3 separate plans that went bad, he tugged his jacket, checked his phone, and scanned the roofs and the alley mouths. Renz himself, Sosa thought, or the closest thing this town. As to him, Renz looked at the pawn shop door, and then at the river direction, then at the storage facility direction, as if he could smell a shift in the weather. He tapped a message, and their phones probably lit up with one word, "move." And then he stopped and tucked the phone away and did not move at all, as if a part of him knew that patience is sometimes the only clever left. Maya's radio whispered, "Sosa in position. Do not spike the ball. Let them exhaust themselves. We will make our case on paper and in bins and on that ledger." Elias exhaled. The first smile in hours touched his eyes. He looked at Talia and at the counter and at the door, and he felt the shape of a town holding. He thought of his son, gone now for years, and of what it would have meant to have a day like this for him, a day when a community refused to hand a boy to his worst choices. Elias pressed a palm to the counter and bowed his head for a breath, then lifted it, steady again. At the church, Lena stacked blankets in a pile taller than her, and insisted she could carry all of them to the closet. Delia said one at a time will do. Chase laughed and then covered his mouth as if laughter had to be rationed. Alma stood and put a hand on his shoulder. "You will fix the radiator another way." She said, "My neighbor has a cousin who fixes for cash and takes pie as partial payment. You will borrow a pie tin and not your future." Chase nodded with a smile. That looked like sunrise under cloud. Reuben looked at them and thought this is how it is supposed to be. Not easy, not traumatic, just people saying we do not leave each other to the wolves. The red cap checked his phone again and frowned at whatever Renz had sent. The driver rubbed his eyes and said something that looked like a complaint. Renz lifted a hand, and it was not a fist. It was a flat palm that said wait. The river gleamed beyond the block like a long line of patience, and the day held itself open for whatever came next. The gray sedan idled like a thought that would not leave the mind. Renz stepped from the rear seat, and the air around him seemed to tighten, not because he was loud, because he had practiced being the kind of quiet that makes others doubt their own footing. He adjusted his jacket and walked toward the pawn shop door with the confidence of a man who believes everything in a room will bend rather than make him push. Redcap flanked him by a half step. The driver hung back with his hands in pockets. Scanning for angles like a gambler counting exits, Maya stood in the wash of window light. Shoulders loose, feet grounded. She lifted one palm, not a stop, a pause, and the gesture put time back into the room. By appointment, she mouthed it again. Renz smiled the way a match flares before it burns a finger. His knuckles touched the glass. His voice was level and almost courteous. "I have a pickup," he said. "Something that belongs to me is in there, and I am here to save everyone time." Elias stepped forward beside Maya with the steadiness of a man answering his own front door. He pointed to the sign that read Community First, and then to the smaller one about limited cash after 3. His voice was a tide that does not apologize for being the ocean. "Nothing in here belongs to someone who takes," he said. Renz's eyes slid to the edges, to Talia with the guitar case, to the back hallway, to the street that had quieted into a kind of listening. He chuckled like a coin rolling to the edge of a table and not falling. Sosa watched from the thrift store doorway, a used paperback tucked under his arm. He noted the choreography, how the block itself seemed to lean inward. Mr. Chavez lingered at his bakery door with a tray of rolls cooling on a rack. Mrs. Patel rearranged a display of batteries a full minute longer than necessary. Small acts that meant witnesses could be had with a raised hand. Sosa's radio vibrated once against his ribs. The second unit had sealed B-14. The ledger photographed, the map bagged, quiet green lights lining up in a row. He did not move. He simply breathed and let the scene show him where trust lived. Renz knocked again. Fingers flat, no impatience on the outside. The red cap smirked on cue. Maya kept her tone even. "This store is choosing de-escalation today," she said. "If you have legitimate business, we can schedule. If you do not, you can keep walking." Renz's gaze finally settled, landing on her with a curiosity he reserved for puzzles. He tilted his head. "You are very calm, officer," he said. Maya nodded. "Calm does not care if you like it," she replied, and something in Renz's eyes cooled. The way a blade looks different when it realizes the meat is not raw from the hallway behind the counter. Talia adjusted the strap on the empty guitar case and took one step toward the side door. A decoy, wearing worn stickers from old bands. Renz's glance flicked and his chin tipped. The red cap peeled off the glass and drifted toward the alley. Mouth casual as a cat, Sosa murmured into his mic, "Tail on the case," he said. And in the dentist's suite, Dr. Alvarez stood from his stool and reached for a mop bucket he did not need to push. The building itself tightened its laces, ready to play its part again in the church hall. Jace finished his call with his grandmother, and Reuben slid the signed statement into a manila envelope with the care of a librarian shelving a rare book. Dahlia peeked at the parking nook and saw the gray sedan reposition a few doors down, her mind clicking fast and quiet. "We may need to move you once more," she told Jace. "Not far, just enough to make a bad man late to his own plan." Alma closed the metal case and squared her shoulders. "I will ride along if a ride is needed," she said. "My husband did not teach me to sit when standing matters." Lena lifted her painted rock that read brave and nodded like a little sergeant. The sight made Jace stand taller without noticing at the pawnshop door. Renz changed tactics. He pulled a folded pamphlet from his pocket. It looked like a church bulletin, but the print inside was a list of names and amounts. He held it to the glass with a grin that was almost fond. "Records are funny things," he said. "They can make a man. They can break him, Eli." He used the old nickname like a hand on a shoulder that is not welcome. Elias did not flinch. He lifted his own paper, the pawn ticket map, and held it to the glass. It showed the kind door and the back stair and the church. It showed the path of a boy, choosing to walk rather than run. And Renz's grin cracked a hair, because some papers carry more weight than threats. Maya's radio breathed Sosa's voice. "Keep him talking," he said. "Boredom is a lever we can pull in the alley." Red Cap followed Talia's silhouette toward the service door. He carried his swagger like a flag, but his steps betrayed a hurry. Talia paused at Dr. Alvarez's door and let it swing open as if by accident. The dentist looked up with pleasant surprise and held out a box of disposable masks. Red Cap caught the door with a palm and stepped into a bright room that smelled of mint and antiseptic. Alvarez smiled like a man who truly enjoys his job. "Afternoon." He said, "Come for a cleaning or just practicing your smile?" Red Cap's mouth twitched. He glanced around as if shelves might hide loot. Alvarez's assistant appeared with a tray, delicate instruments gleaming. "Do you need anything?" she asked cheerfully. A moment stretched. Audacity met normalcy, and wobbled. Red Cap muttered a no and backed away. Unsure how to be a wolf in a room that insists you are a patient asterisk, Sosa stayed with his paperback. Eyes soft, body loose, mind counting, Red Cap reappeared near the alley with confusion on his face. Renz caught the micro shake of the head, and a muscle in his jaw ticked. He glanced toward the river, as if he could will a box to appear by a bench. He checked his phone and found only the echo of his own message. Impatience sharpened him too thin. He looked again at Maya, who had not moved, and at Elias, who had not bent, and at the sign that said Community First. And for the first time all afternoon, he looked tired. A man who could feel something old and real pressing back inside the church, Delia decided. "We go to the fellowship hall kitchen," she said, "a place full of clatter and apron strings. Jace, carry the box of plastic cups. Reuben, walk with Alma Lena. You are in charge of napkins." The little procession moved as if nothing on earth could make cups heavy or napkins urgent. Ordinary life as cloak and shield. In the kitchen, a sink ran, and a volunteer hummed off key. The sound of a town continuing to be a town, no matter who tried to pull it into a story. It did not want at the pawn shop door. Renz tapped the glass once more, then spread his hands, as if to show that his pockets held nothing but charm. He leaned in close enough that Maya could see the tiny white scar under his eye, the kind you get from a bottle thrown in a cheap argument. He spoke low enough that only she and Elias could hear. "You are holding a boy who belongs to me," he said. "I paid for his mistake in advance. I expect delivery." Elias's reply was immediate and soft. "Boys do not belong to you," he said. "They belong to futures they still have time to reach." Renz's smile fell off his face like a mask set down at the end of a tired play. The driver swore under his breath and kicked the tire. The gray sedan drifted a foot and then settled again. Sosa's phone buzzed. A text from Barnett, the river. "Lot is empty." They gave up waiting. He replied with one word, "Good." Then to Maya he whispered, "I can pick him up on the storage unit case any time. But if he walks now, he drags fewer kids into court with him. Your call." Maya watched Renz's shoulders rise and fall. She thought of paperwork and of Lena's painted rock and of a town that had shown up without a siren. She thought of Jace's statement signed in neat letters, and she chose steadiness over spectacle. She lifted her chin. "You can leave now," she said, "and when you do, understand that a judge will read your name from a ledger soon. And when that happens, there will be no crowd and no glass to knock on. Only a room where choices sit on tables and pretend they are not yours." Renz held her eyes for a long count. Then he smiled a small, tired smile. Not victory, not defeat. Only a man admitting that the day had turned away from him. He stepped back. Red Cap flanked him again. The driver slouched. The gray sedan pulled away with an exhaust cough that sounded like annoyance more than retreat. Sosa waited 2 beats and then stepped from the thrift store and into the pawn shop with the calm of a friend arriving late to coffee. He nodded to Elias and to Maya and set the paperback on the counter like a small trophy. "Unit is sealed," he said softly. "Your medals and watches and rings will go home if we can find their homes. Renz has decisions arriving by mail. No siren, no banner." Elias closed his eyes and opened them, gratitude moving through him like warm bread. He looked at Talia, who exhaled the breath she had been holding since the guitar case strap went over her shoulder. He looked at the door where glass reflected a street that had chosen to be kind. He reached for the phone and handed it back to Jace's empty stool, a reminder of where the day began and how far it had come. And for the first time since the bell screamed at the start, he let himself feel tired in a way that felt clean. The tired that follows meaning rather than mess at the church. Jace stacked cups and napkins in a neat line and felt his hands steady. Alma poured lemonade into a pitcher with a flourish and told a joke about Joe that made Lena giggle and cover her mouth. Reuben tucked the envelope with the statement into his jacket and nodded to Delia. "Almost there," his eyes said. Almost through asterisk, even with the gray sedan going. The block held its breath like a choir, waiting for the next note. Maya stood easy, by the window. Sosa slipped the paperback back under his arm and kept his posture loose. Elias wiped an invisible smudge from the counter, as if polishing a moment until it shone. The phone on Jace's stool stayed face down and silent under the cloth. A small flag that said the hook would not be biting anymore. Delia called from the Malay church kitchen. her voice warm with clatter and comfort. Cups are stacked, lemonade is poured, the statement is signed. We are ready for the next right thing. Maya met Sosa's eyes and nodded. Quiet escort, no parade. We bring the boy in through the side entrance, where paperwork is a table and not a spotlight. Sosa agreed. The desk sergeant knows to expect a witness, not a spectacle. He will log the phone and the backpack contents. He will log the Purple Heart as recovered property with a hold for Alma's signature. Nothing noisy. Only true Elias closed the shop register and placed Mr. Chavez's warm loaves beside the guitar cases. One would go to the church. One would be sliced here for whoever had stood watch without being asked. Talia slipped her knit cap deeper and asked if she could carry the prop case out the alley now. Not as a decoy anymore, as a way to let her hands shake and then settle on guitar strings at home. Maya smiled and said yes, then watched her cross the hallway like a shadow that had learned to be brave in the church kitchen. Alma poured lemonade. With the precision of a woman who has measured medicine and grief in equal parts, she set a cup in front of Jace and another in front of Lena, who held her brave rock like a badge. Reuben tucked the signed statement into a manila envelope and wrote the time across the flap, his handwriting steady as fence posts. Jace asked what happens when he walks into the station. He did not whisper, and that felt important. Delia answered plain. You tell the same truth you put on that paper. You let Maya ask the questions that put shape around the fear. You let Sosa take the ledger where it needs to go. You let me call your grandmother and tell her you are walking through the door. Sosa's phone buzzed with a quiet update from Barnett. The sedan is circling the river again. No pickup. Patience running thin. Sosa replied with a brief thank you and slipped his phone away. He looked at Elias and said the storage ledger has enough ink to keep Wrens busy in a courthouse for a season. He will not be able to tug on boys like a fisherman tugging a line without someone seeing. Elias breathed out, a sound like an engine finally idling smooth. He glanced at the thank you notes on the corkboard. One from a mother who had pawned her ring and gotten it back. He thought of adding a new note later. Not from Jace, from himself. A reminder that locking a door can be an act of mercy if you are willing to open another one. The church fellowship hall filled with small noises that sounded like home. A drawer closing, a chair leg scraping, a laugh trying out its legs again. Alma set the metal box carefully into a larger plastic bin with soft towels. She would take it home later with Reuben walking her up the steps. She insisted on carrying her own history. Jace watched her and understood something about honor that no speech had ever managed to teach him. He looked at Lena and promised again to bring her a soda from Mrs. Patel's. Lena grinned like a sunrise and held out the rock. Brave is for both of us, she said. He tapped the rock with a knuckle. A contract written in pink. Maya stepped into the kitchen with Sosa, her voice even. We are ready to walk, not run. Jace stood and picked up the manila envelope and the backpack now emptied of its shame. He left it open to show that nothing hid inside. Delia tied an apron around her waist and kissed the top of Lena's head. You and Alma are going to help me label spice jars, while the world minds its own business, she said. Reuben lifted the bin with the metal towels and nodded to Alma. We will go down the side ramp, slow and steady, the way a person walks when they are carrying something precious in the pawn shop. Mr. Chavez knocked and passed Elias a small paper sack. 2 apple turnovers still warm. For the boy when he is done telling the truth, he said. Elias swallowed the ache that rose at such simple kindness. Talia's text chimed once. Home safe. Strings tuned, deep breath taken, Elias smiled. The kind that does not need an audience. He set the turnovers beside the bread and covered them with a clean towel. Saving sweetness for later is its own kind of prayer. As they left the church, the sky over Maple Lane had the pale blue of a day deciding to forgive itself. Sosa led with the easy stride of a man taking a neighbor to City Hall to sign a permit. Maya walked beside Jace and kept her hands visible. Not because she needed to, because presence is a language, and she wanted him to hear safety and not surveillance. Delia waved from the steps with Alma and Lena, flanking her like a tiny honor guard. The canvas thrift tote now held only dish towels and a box of tea. The weight of the day had shifted to evidence and to choice halfway down the block. A dented pickup slowed. The mechanic from the radiator shop leaned out and called to Jace by name, the voice surprised but not sharp. "You disappeared on me, kid," he said. "You still need that radiator to keep your mother's car breathing." Jace flushed. "I will pay you the right way," he said. "No more shortcuts." The mechanic nodded. "Bring the car by on Saturday," he said. "You can sweep the bay and scrub the oil stains and earn half off with elbow grease. My cousin teaches at the auto class, and he likes kids who show their face. After they stumble, no hurry. Just show up." The pickup rolled on. A small mercy tucking itself into the story without asking for applause. They reached the side entrance of the station. A plain door with a buzzer, no steps, no mugshot flash waiting inside. The desk sergeant looked up and saw the manila envelope and the calm on Maya's face and the soft set of Sousa's jaw. He nodded and slid a sign and sheet across. He did. Not make it theater, he made it process. Jace signed and handed over the phone. The texts and the contact name and the last messages would become lines in a case file. A dry place where the day would be translated into dates and times and simple verbs. Maya sat with Jace in a small interview room that smelled faintly of coffee. She asked him to tell the story from the beginning, the way he would tell it to his sister. And so he did. He told it plain. He kept the parts that made him look small, because that is what makes a person look real back at the pawn shop. Elias finally flipped the sign from by appointment to closed. He turned off the open flag neon and let the room exhale. He laid a fresh pawn ticket on the glass and wrote 3 words in the blank space: alive, safe, honest. Then he pinned it to the corkboard beside the thank you notes. Talia would roll her eyes at the sentiment and then secretly take a photo of it later. Mrs. Patel stepped in from next door with a small cooler bag. She left 2 sodas on the counter for Lena with a note that said "Pay me in stories." And she was gone before Elias could say thank you, kindness moving with the stealth of good weather asterisk. When Jace stepped back out of the station an hour later, the sun had dipped, and the street lights had not yet decided to hum. Sosa had his hands in his jacket pockets. Maya had a tired smile that did not sag. Delia stood by the church door with Lena bouncing on her toes. Alma lifted the bin with the metal and said she would sleep with it on the table beside her chair, not because she needed to guard it, because she wanted to be close to Joe's name one more night. Jace exhaled, and in that breath the boy, who ran, became the young man who walked back, step by step, into a town that had refused to sell him to his worst moment. Morning came in soft and blue. The block wore a kind of hush that felt earned. Elias stood inside the pawn shop with the blinds half lifted. The glass cases shone from a late-night wipe. The bread from Mr. Chavez waited under a towel beside the apple turnovers. The sign still said closed, not because business was unwelcome, because the room was catching its breath. He touched the corkboard and the pawn ticket that read alive, safe, honest, and he felt the words settle into the walls, like a promise at the church. Elma set the medal in a simple shadow box Pastor Reuben found in a back closet. The ribbon lay against velvet that Lena had smoothed with tiny hands. The photo of Joe tucked in the corner like a blessing. She whispered to the glass that men like Joe teach us how to carry weight without making it someone else's wound. Delia brewed a pot of coffee that smelled like a diner at dawn and handed Alma a cup with both hands. "Today we begin returning what was taken," she said. "Today we let quiet do the heavy lifting." Jace woke before his alarm. The sky still silver. He walked to the radiator shop with a knot in his stomach and a decision in his bones. The mechanic handed him gloves and pointed at a bucket and a brush. "Scrub the oil pan in the bay floor," he said. "Elbow grease for a discount." Jace bent to the work, the kind that makes a boy's breath find a steady rhythm. The mechanic watched without comment. Then he nodded once. "You show up again next week, and I will teach you to pull a pump. Easy does it, no rush." Jace smiled at the concrete, because sometimes you are not ready to look a kindness in the face. "But you can let your hands say thank you." Officer Maya rolled into the station with hair still damp from a quick shower and a list in her pocket. Sosa was already there, his jacket hanging on a chair, the ledger on the desk, the phone warrant clipped. To the side, the judge signed the arrest for W. Renner at first light. Sosa said, "Pick up quiet, no theater. Barnett and I will go. You stay on the block, keep the temperature where it belongs." Maya nodded. "Go gentle," she said. "The best arrests do not upstage the truth they serve." Sosa smiled that tired smile that men in his line of work practice until it is almost natural. He picked up the evidence bag, and they rolled out with no lights, no sound. Only Purpose Talia sat on her stoop restringing a guitar, the coils of wool. Wire catching the early light, she watched the neighborhood breathe and thought about yesterday, about how a town can be loud and still know how to whisper. Her phone buzzed, a message from Delia. "We are opening the fellowship hall at 9. Can you play something soft while folks sign in to identify the recovered pieces?" Talia looked at the half-strung guitar and texted back yes. Then she tuned. Strings by ear. She wanted the first notes to feel like a floor under tired feet. Elias opened his back door and walked down the shared hallway. He stopped at Dr. Alvarez's office and left a bag with turnovers and a note that said thank you for being a wall that opens. He left another for Mrs. Patel on the corner with a soda for Lena tucked inside. At Mr. Chavez's bakery he prepaid. For a tray of rolls for the church, the baker shook his hand, flour and all. Small currency moving like a quiet river. No ledger needed for this kind of accounting at a brownstone across town. Sosa and Barnett climbed 3 steps and knocked. A woman with tired eyes opened the door a crack and peered out at the 2 men who were not trying to look bigger than they were. "Renner here?" Sosa asked, voice gentle. The woman jerked a thumb over her shoulder and called back into the dim room. "William, 2 men from the city." Renz appeared in a doorway with sleep on his face and calculation behind it. He looked at Sosa and read the room quickly. This was not a crowd. This was not glass in a sign. This was the kind of moment that does not turn into a story, because it does not need to. Sosa held out the paper and spoke the charge and the rights. Renz's hands went behind his back without a speech. Barnett's cuffs clicked once, a clean sound. Renz glanced at his mother, a flicker. Then he nodded as if to say the day had finally called his bluff. The door closed without a neighbor leaning over a rail. The street kept its morning. A bus sighed at the corner and pulled away by mid-morning. The fellowship hall filled with faces carrying lists and hope, and the kind of dread that says, "What if my thing is not here?" Dahlia stood at a card table with a clipboard. Talia played a quiet progression on her guitar. Reuben greeted people by name and by story. Alma sat near the front with the medal in the box beside her and offered tissues to anyone who needed one. Sosa arrived with a deputy and a stack of photos. He did not wear his jacket like armor. He wore it like a shirt. Officers logged items as owners pointed and told how each piece tied to a life. The engagement ring that had been pawned once and redeemed twice. The watch given on a 21st birthday that ticked again when shaken. Not everything was there, but enough was there that relief took up space. Chase stood against the wall. Hands visible, eyes steady. Delia had asked if he wanted to speak. He said he would. He stepped forward when there was a pause and cleared his throat. "My name is Jace," he said. "I made a coward's choice, and then I made a different one. I am here to keep making the different one. If any of you want me to carry boxes or scrub floors or run errands, to make even a corner of this right. I will. Show up, I will keep showing up. The room answered not with applause, with murmurs of yes, with names called softly, with a list started on the clipboard titled Tasks for Jace. Reuben smiled and wrote his name first on the list. Coffee carafes to be cleaned, hymnals to be lifted, chairs to be stacked. Redemption is heavy work, and the weight helps you stand outside. Mr. Chavez set a folding table and laid out the tray of rolls. Mrs. Patel poured sweet tea. The street felt like a place where good weather lingers. Maya walked the block without appearing to patrol it. She checked blind spots and smiled at people who had smiled for her yesterday. She felt the hum under her feet ease, the quiet kind that tells a cop the day might end without a siren. She allowed herself a small stretch of the shoulders, the first one in hours that was not a rehearsal for a fight. Elias finally flipped his sign to open at noon. The bell chimed the normal chime. 2 shoppers came in and browsed a shelf of old records. A man asked the price of a guitar, and Talia answered from the doorway that the action needed a small adjustment, and she would do it for free if he bought it. The man laughed and said, "That is how you earn a customer." He handed over his card and tapped the counter. Elias bagged the guitar with practiced hands, and for a moment the shop felt like any shop in any small town. A safe room with a till, and a story and a bell that rings because people come and go. Just returned from the station with Maya and Sosa at his shoulder, not escorted like a suspect, accompanied like a young man who had chosen to be seen. He paused at the pawn shop door, the same door that had once trapped him and saved him. He looked at Elias, who stood behind the counter with a cloth in his hands, and he asked if the offer to help still stood. Elias nodded, stronger than yesterday. He said, "We clean cases on Tuesdays. We log serial numbers on Wednesdays. We tune guitars whenever someone needs a song to stay in tune." Jace smiled small, then bigger. He stepped inside and reached for the cloth. Talia tossed him a pair of powder-free gloves with a flick that made him grin. Dahlia poked her head in and said, "There are boxes to carry at the church when you are done." Reuben waved from the sidewalk. Alma lifted the shadow box, where sunlight took the scratches and turned them into a kind of halo across town. Wren sat in a small room with blank walls and a metal table. Sosa slid the ledger across and asked if he wanted to talk. Wren stared at the handwriting that had once made him feel powerful. He rubbed the scar under his eye and sighed. A sound like a man hearing his own story, read back to him without the parts that made him feel big. He asked for a lawyer. He did not spit. He did not pound the table. A tired man who had run out of doors that opened from the inside, outside the room. Barnett wrote a report that would read like any report. Dates, times, items, and yet the edges of his handwriting softened, because paperwork can carry mercy if the day that gave birth to it was built that way. As afternoon slid toward evening, the fellowship hall thinned. Owners left with pieces of their lives wrapped in towels. Talia played a song that sounded like a window opening. Lena drew chalk circles on the sidewalk and wrote the word brave inside each one. Alma hugged Delia and Reuben and told them that Joe would have liked today because it felt like people had walked each other home. Maya stood by the curb and looked at the pawn shop door and its deadbolt and its glass and the reflection of a town that had chosen to be itself, one kind decision at a time. Evening laid a calm hand on the town. The streetlights hummed low. The bakery windows glowed. The pawn shop breathed like a chest at rest. Elias stood behind the counter with the bell quiet and the cases shining. He looked at the corkboard where Alive, Safe, Honest sat beside a dozen thank-you notes. He added a small card in his careful hand. "We do not sell our sons to their worst moment." He pinned it with a brass tack and stepped back. The words fit the wall like a nail fits wood across the street. Mrs. Patel flicked her sign to open late and set 2 sodas aside with Lena written in marker on the caps. Mr. Chavez leaned a tray of rolls in the doorway, so the smell wandered out and found the evening. Dr. Alvarez turned his waiting room lamp to low and wiped the arm of a chair. A little ritual for a day that had asked everyone to be larger than they felt. Talia tuned her guitar on the stoop and let a soft run of notes float, the kind that tells a block it is safe to speak in normal voices again. At the church, the last of the owners signed their names beside the items that had found their way home. Alma sat with the shadow box on her lap, ribbon straight, photo tucked. She told Reuben a story about Joe waiting in a snowstorm for their first bus as a married pair, how he had kept his hand on her elbow the whole time. "We took turns being the warm one," she said. "That is how you outlast weather." Reuben smiled and said, "That is how a town outlasts a storm too. One hand on another elbow." One steady word at a time. Jace finished stacking chairs in the fellowship hall and carried the last folded table to the storage room. His shoulders ached, not from fear. From work. He liked this ache. It made sleep feel like a promise. Delia handed him a scrap of paper with names and times. Radiator shop Saturday morning, church pantry Monday afternoon, thrift store Wednesday for sorting books. He stared at the list with the respectful awe a person feels for a map, not because it shows everything, because it shows the next turn. And the next, he tucked it in his wallet next to a photo of Lena in her school playpaper crown. The crown was crooked. The grin was straight as a line drawn with a ruler. Maya walked the block slowly. No rush, no siren. She stopped at the bakery and bought one roll and broke it in half on the sidewalk. Half for her. Half for a dog that had decided to adopt the block on weekends. She called Barnett to ask after paperwork. He said the ledger was logged, the phone archived, the key bagged. The judge set a date without fanfare. Sosa texted her a photo, not of Renz in cuffs, only of the closed unit door with the numbered tag. The quiet end to a loud habit. She smiled. She preferred her wins like this, small and irreversible. Inside the pawn shop, Elias set 2 stools at the counter and wiped them like a man setting a table. Jace stepped in with a cautious hello that turned into a real one when he saw Talia. She tossed him a clean cloth and a pair of gloves. "You get the watches," she said. "I get the glass." He nodded and opened the cases with the care of someone handling time. Elias showed him how to lay items on the felt, how to log the serials with numbers neat as a mason's line. Jace leaned over the ledger and wrote steady. His jaw set in a way that meant proud without trying to look tough. Elias watched him and thought of his own boy, thought of all the seconds that had slipped between them like water. He did not try to plug that river with this moment. He let the gratitude move through he and out into the room. It made the air lighter. The doorbell chimed, and Alma stepped in holding the shadow box like a baby. Maya followed with Lena, who clutched 2 sodas. 1 grape, 1 orange. Lena set a painted rock on the counter. She had made a new one. This one. "Read home" in block letters. She tapped it with a finger. "This stays here," she declared. "It will keep the door smart." Elias bowed as if he were receiving a medal himself. He set the rock beside the register and the card that read Community First. The words looked like they had always waited for each other. Delia slipped in, with Mr. Chavez behind her. He carried a paper sack that leaked butter smell, apple turnovers, and a loaf for tomorrow. He set them on the counter and insisted that everyone take a bite before speeches began. Reuben arrived with a stack of bulletins he did not plan to hand out. Old habit. His voice was gentle as he said that some days need a line drawn under them, and this was one. Not to close it, to protect it, to keep the meaning from smudging. Maya lifted a cup of water like a toast to small doors locked at the right time. She said, to better doors opening. She stood and cleared his throat. He did not shake. He said, "Today taught me that a locked door can be a hand held out if someone on the other side knows what they want to save." I walked into glass and fear, and I walked out with work and a list and a way to pay a man back without stealing from him first. He looked at Alma and said he was sorry again, not as penance, as gratitude, for the chance to feel the weight of awe. A ribbon that did not belong to him, and to set it down in the right hands. Alma stepped close and fixed the collar of his hoodie like a grandmother would fix a tie. He let her. It felt like a blessing outside. The mechanic's pickup rattled past, and the man lifted 2 fingers from the wheel. A small salute that said, "I see you making a road without shortcuts." Maya's phone buzzed once with a message that read arraignment set, no spectacle. Sosa added a line. Pawn shop return day went smooth. Ledger has names, not stories. We will keep it that way. Maya slipped the phone back into her pocket and decided she would sleep with her window open. Let the night air prove itself harmless again. Talia began to play. A slow tune that rose and fell like breath after a run that ends with you on your feet. Neighbors drifted in, some to buy a record, some to say nothing more than I was thinking about yesterday and wanted to stand where it turned. Elias poured lemonade into paper cups and handed one to Jace first. Mr. Chavez insisted that sugar helps good choices stick. Lena asked if the painted rock should sit near the door or the counter. Elias said the counter, where people place their valuables. We will place courage with them. She grinned and set it there with the solemnity of a judge tapping a gavel as. Night settled. Elias walked to the glass door and turned the deadbolt slowly. The same lock that had clicked shut at the start now turned open with a sound that felt like a sentence finishing itself. He pushed the door and let the cool air slide in. He propped it with a wedge and pinned a handwritten note beside the hours. If you need a minute to breathe, come in, no purchase required. He looked at the sign and felt something in his chest ease. A hinge oiled, a key turned, a door ready for the right kind of arrivalsches stood beside him and watched the street. The bakery lights, the corner store glow, the dentist's lamp. He could picture the service stair where a janitor with a key ring had held a door. He could picture the church kitchen and Alma's hands on a medal. He could picture the river. Lot where impatience had burned itself out. He could picture the storage unit door with its numbered tag. He could picture Lena with her rock and her soda and her certainty that brave can be written in paint and kept on a counter. He breathed in like a swimmer who has found the shore. He breathed out like a boy who finally hears his own name spoken. Kindly Reuben laid a palm on the glass and said the simplest benediction he knew. May we keep choosing each other, Delia added, and may we keep choosing the quiet plan that works. Maya added, and may we keep paperwork honest so that truth does not have to raise its voice. Alma added, and may we sleep easy knowing some things. Made their way home. Talia added, and may the next song be the kind you hum while sweeping. Mr. Chavez added, and may there be enough bread for every brave morning. Mrs. Patel from the doorway added, and enough sweet tea for every apology that is said with a whole-hearted Elias, looked at Chase and saw not a thief, not a headline, not a project. He saw a young man standing inside a circle he helped draw, alive. Safe, honest, he handed Jace the key to the back door. Not as a test, as trust. If you get here before me in the mornings, open the lights, he said. We will start with the guitars, then the glass. Jace took the key, and the metal felt cool and right. He tucked it in his pocket beside the folded list, and the tiny verse Reuben had given him. He did not make a speech. He nodded the kind of nod that belongs to a spine, and stepped behind the counter to place Lena's rock in its spot. The bell rang one last time as a breeze pushed the door a finger wide and then back again. A small sound that used to mean a transaction, and tonight meant a town remembering what a door is for, not only to keep out harm, also to keep in hope long enough to take root. The light over the guitars glowed. The glass cases shone. The sign that Reed Community first caught the reflection of people who had chosen to live as if it were true, and for a long quiet moment, no one reached for a pocket or a plan. They only stood where yesterday could see them and nodded as evening settled, a simple agreement between neighbors and the night.